While we just spoke about the display representations that are available for each object type, the next step up in the hierarchy is what we call a display set. And a display set is really a combination of representations for each object at one given state. So what I mean by that is, let's just use MEP design plan as an example. A display set is essentially this table, which chooses for each individual object what display rep to use to display that object. Now, you don't necessarily have to check a box for a given object type, and without a box checked for that given object type, if this display set were active, then that object itself would not display at all. But in most cases, we have a checkbox for at least one display representation, and it should only be one display representation for a given display set. So a way to use this as an example is, let's move down to our ductwork here, and we'll see that we're using the plan display representation for all four components of ductwork in the program. And again, that is because the plan display representation uses the hidden lines feature and displays the objects in a two-line mode. Now, that is something that is usually what the user wants to use when they go ahead and display their ductwork. So that is how this particular display set is set up. Now, if we wanted to, under the same display set, to no longer display objects in a plan display representation, but the one-line display representation, we simply need to go ahead and set the display representation for one line as the active display rep for this given display set. So if we did that, we can go ahead and hit OK, and we'll see now that our object here is now in a gray color that's been set here. So, and it is only displayed in one line. So if I were to go ahead and draw additional new ductwork, it's going to continue to come in one line, because that is a global setting, and we've chosen to display our ductwork in a one-line display representation. So let's go ahead and go back into our display manager here, and we can look back at our sets again. You'll see here that we have multiple display sets available to the user, and you'll see that we have model and we have plan. We usually have a model and a plan for each individual. You'll notice here these are similar to what we see in display configurations, which we'll talk about in our next video. But for this instance, we'll see that we usually have a plan display set, and that plan display set tells us how we want to display objects like these, all the different types of objects in a top view, because we'll use a plan. In a plan display representation, essentially the program is flattening the object display versus a model where they do have their elevation in space, and they exist, as far as the AutoCAD platform is concerned, as 3D faces. But again, you do not get the advantages of the hidden lines feature, among other things. The model display representation is generally going to take a little bit longer to regenerate than the two-line, but obviously the inclusion of the hidden lines feature in the plan display rep will make it take the longest out of all three. So now that we've switched our display set back to plan, we will see that all our ductwork is again now displaying in that magenta setting as we had set in our previous video. And that is because that setting is overriding any of the system settings. And we'll see here, since we only applied that change to the duct object type, we do not see the changes impacted on the duct fitting object type, again because they are set as separate object types within the display system. So if I wanted to go back and get them aligned, I would go into my plan display representation, and again, an easy way to find that which one's active is to switch to just click on the top part of this tree structure here and scroll till you see something in bold. That's the active display set, and see which display rep is chosen at this point, and that is the plan. So we'll go in here and we'll see that it is indeed magenta. We'll set this back to by block, and as soon as we do that, we're going to have consistent layering among all of our objects in the given system. Now, an additional amount of control that you can gain with a display set is the display of certain classifications of objects. So let's go ahead and see what we're talking about there. Now, a classification is something that will allow to have a additional layer of organization that extends beyond systems but applies to a given object type. So what I mean by that here, and we'll go ahead and select our MEP design plan again, we'll see that we have a display options tab here, and this essentially shows us the classifications that have been defined for this particular drawing and the types within each classification. So we'll see that we have device types, and then we have multiple types of devices. So if we were to go ahead and uncheck these boxes, we can go ahead and control the visibility of those types of objects. So those that have been classified as lighting versus receptacles versus communication, the control of those can be achieved, because again, when we look at our display representation control, we'll see that it does not delineate between different types of devices. In this instance, there's only one setting for devices. So if you want to be able to control the display of objects beyond just the individual device or object type, you're going to need to create a classification and then subclassify all of the objects under that classification type. So this is an additional level of control that you can gain using the display sets component of the display system in ABS and ADT.